Hello, Philippe. Thank you very much for accepting to do this interview. We're going to start with a different question. Antonioni blow up kind of question. So, okay, that would be a challenge to do 1.5 hours like this.
No.
It would be easy. It would be really easy. Okay, now I have a new question, a kind of poetic question, that it's what in your taste, smell, sound, or image that today still transport you to your childhood and make you want to start telling your story? It's a very Proustianic question, but okay.
Okay.
Okay. No, this absolutely the same, but with sound.
Okay. Yes. So can you repeat the question?
Yes, of course, of course. What is it? A taste, a smell,
Okay.
a sound, or an image that takes you back to your childhood, and in a way would be a good way to start to tell your story.
Okay. A taste, a smell, a sound. Take me back to my childhood. I'm still looking for it, actually. There's not really I don't have that. I don't have this kind of Madeleine de Proust effect. Because I think what the driver for me is actually not to go back to my childhood, not because it was bad. I had a great childhood, but I have a general anxiety about looking back and going back. And so
it's kind of a vertigo or something.
No, it's not a vertigo. It's I don't say that in a I hope in a pretentious way, that I don't like to look back. But again, I had a great childhood, and I might, from time to time, I have a memory of maybe one of the first aesthetic experience I've had, but I really don't have this.
This thing. Okay.
This thing that project me back in time.
Okay. No worries. You are a French guy. You were born in, I don't know how to say this, is Troyes. Troyes. Okay. You were born there. You were raised there?
A little bit.
Okay. And what? It's a small town.
It's like a small town.
It's like Cascais or 60,000 people. I
really?
was at the Wikipedia. 60,000 people.
Well, when I left, it was 59,000.
And how it was the cultural scene there?
I left when my parents were living there, because my father was working in the textile industry, and it was the location in France, in the east of France, where the textile industry was centered. But we left, my family left, I think I was 7. So I don't have a very precise memory of it, beside playing with friends, and that I have actually a good memory of that. But in terms of cultural scene, what I remember is I remember my parents taking me to auction house.
To auction house there?
Yeah, and I remember looking at art because so my father was working with in a textile corporation that was run by someone named Pierre Lévy. And Pierre Lévy, it was a group, if I remember well. It was Petit Bateau, Lacoste, was called Devant les Recoins. And but it was a large group. And Pierre Lévy was a very important collector in France. And I remember seeing works of art when my parents would go for like weekend Sunday lunch at Pierre Lévy's house and looking at some art there. But in terms of the cultural part, the situation in Troyes, beside the fact that it's not far from Reims, where champagne was invented.
Yeah, no.
The region which gives me this great illusion that I was born in Champagne.
Okay, it's a good
That's
illusion.
why I have a very sparkling personality.
Okay, maybe there you have some of Proustian thing, you know.
Yeah, but I don't really like Champagne either.
Oh, you don't like champagne?
I like Champagne, but I don't go crazy for Champagne.
Okay. I like it very much, but
well,
okay. That question goes to another one, that it's almost universal that the French people kind of resemble or feel that are a bit superior, and I was trying to figure out why that happens. It's more on the education part, you know, or it's more something that comes from behind because the French culture was predominant in Europe, like the Russian aristocracy was speaking in French. Why do you feel that happens? Because we can start the question with this. Do you feel that, do you feel that in a way?
Well, no, but I think the explanation is quite simple. We both smell very bad and smell very good. Okay. We produce great perfume through the fashion industry and an incredible amount of cheese. And the cheese smell quite bad. So I think the superiority of the French culture is because we have this, we master exquisite fragrance and really food or matter that exalt an excruciating smell. So if you can resist the tension between numéro 5 de Chanel and Roblochon, I think you indeed have you can exercise a world superiority.
Okay, but in a more reasonable way, do you think like you did the high school in France?
I did.
In Paris or no? Okay. And do you think the teachers, they kind of excel the French culture to the pupils or?
No.
No.
No, well, I
because you're not very French in that way.
No, I'm not very French.
Yeah,
well, look, besides the cheese and the perfume cultural background, which I think cannot be underestimated, there is still an art tradition, an architecture tradition, a literary tradition,
a philosophic tradition,
a philosophical tradition, musical tradition, though.
There, the Germans maybe.
Well, we always had problem with German music in France.
So you feel that?
But so there is, there is this great tradition. But I think it's never only one aspect. I think when you have the cultural tradition, the philosophical tradition, and so on and so forth. That actually existed in France because France was also the center of a lot of
the world.
Cultural mixing,
Okay.
like through invasion, through immigration between the North and the South. Mm-hmm. So the richness of culture is always, provided by the fact that the gene pool, the cultural gene pool, is diverse. Mm-hmm. And that works because of this influence that came through France. So you put that, in historical context with, which we cannot ignore, a lifestyle, a way of living that is rather pleasant. So, but I mean, I don't feel the superiority. I don't dislike the fact that you think that I might be superior, but myself, I don't feel it, and I try not to exercise it.
I don't feel that on you. I was speaking of the French culture in general.
Well, I mean, like it's a little bit like Serralves, when you have the culture, the lifestyle, the setting, the landscape, which is quite diverse from the south again to the north. I think also the fact that France is surrounded by many seas, port of entries, that is a way in and a way out, that diplomatic tradition. Also, I think for me that's very important. France has been traditionally, philosophically, politically, we say in French, une terre d'accueil. A welcoming country, and that makes, contribute to the richness of culture. So if other cultures see it as, on a higher ground, I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
At a certain point, did you have the will to go to the creative side, to be a painter, to be a sculptor, to be a writer, or even a musician? How was your teenage time, and what were you looking for at that period, and how did you find out your way?
Well, I'm still looking for my way.
That's good.
I was attracted to creative communities, to visual culture.
To visual culture.
Very early on, I think I think I can remember a painting or a sculpture or an image more than I can remember a face. So I can recognize a painting, but it will take me 5 times to recognize a person. I need to see the same person 5 times so that I can print the memory. I was attracted to the creative community. I didn't come from a creative, a family with part of the creative community. I was lucky enough to. My mother studied art history when I was a child, and through her, I've learned a lot of art history because I was making her. Out of pure sadism from my part, I would force my mother to do her homework, and I would quiz her. So I would show her an image, and she would have to tell me what it is. And she had these little cards, Bristol cards, and on one side she had an image, and on the other side, what was the image? So painting, sculpture, antiquities. So I would show her the image, and she would need to tell me what I was reading, because she would make me do my homework, and I hated that.
And then you reversed it.
So I say, well, there is no reason. If you torture me, I torture you. But through this purely sadistic impulse, I actually learn a lot. So, then I was lucky to meet around my group of friends a specific friend whose family was in the world of architecture. And it opened many doors for me to understand, to have a different look at what a creative profession. And then I started to pull the string.
How old were you?
I think I was maybe 13, 14.
Okay.
And then I pulled the thread of that, and then I remember starting to have fascination with some artists, and
which artists?
Well, the first one that I really felt what really made an impact, and I remember it like extremely clearly, was Salvador Dali.
Okay.
Not because of his art, but because he was on television. And when I was a kid, he was making advertising for the chocolate brand Lanvin. And he would be on television, and with his mustache, and he would say on television with his very singular voice, he was talking like that, Salvador Dali, and he was doing that. Je suis fou du chocolat Lanvin. And I was like, who's this person? And then I'm sure my parents told me, well, his name is Salvador Dali, and he's he's a surrealist artist. And I thought, like, oh, that's interesting. I love this idea that he was not. I mean, then I look at the painting, and it was for a young person, they are mesmerizing. And then you start to. I started to learn about surrealism through Dali, and then I was like, okay, so he's a painter, he's a sculptor, he's a public figure, he's an actor, he makes performance, and all that was fascinating to me.
And you were drawing or something?
No,
not at all.
No.
And Salvador Dali didn't make to you the willingness of become an artist, or?
Well, no. Well, what he gave me was an interest in the world of images.
Okay.
But I was really young, so I'm sure I tried things.
You tried,
but it was not really a priority to be an artist. Plus, I didn't really know how I would do that. So I'm sure I tried. I remember I tried. It was great for girlfriends to say, "Oh, you're painting."
But you did paintings.
Well, maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
And I hope they are destroyed. And I should actually maybe place, like an announcement in the paper that if they still exist, I will buy them back to destroy them myself.
There was an artist, Gaetan, you remember that guy that does the self-portraits? He was doing that. He was trying to buy drawings that he did, that he found out were not great, to destroy them. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the first artist to do that.
Mine was not that even great. They were like, I think it was really pathetic. It was terrible. But then so Dali, but Joseph Beuys. And I have for Joseph Beuys,
but it was the oniric.
No, it was the same than Dali, because I always thought I thought there is a lot of thing in common between Dali and Beuys.
The dramatic.
They forged a character. They were public figures. Of course, the content of the work is very different. So, but when I saw Beuys performances for the first time, I was very, very impressed. Plus, the installations.
Where did you
I saw
see that?
Beuys in a small art center in a town where my family has a countryside house in the center of France. It's called Memac, and there is an art center there, which is run by a great couple, Caroline Bissière and Jean-Paul Blanchet, and they had an exhibition about the 1970s there. And I saw a video of Joseph Beuys putting fat behind his knees, and I thought, I was like, well, that's I love to see things that I couldn't understand.
Okay.
And that really triggered my curiosity, that he was putting fat behind his knees and he was bending over and the fat was falling apart. And like, of course, because it was in an exhibition, I understood it was art. And I was like, well, if art is doing things that defied conventional wisdom, then I will be. I'm even more interested.
Okay. And what did you do at university?
Well, I partied a lot.
Okay. Apart from that,
I studied law.
it was in Paris.
In Paris. So
you studied law?
Yeah, and art history.
Oh. And art history.
Yeah.
Like a major and a minor. In...
I did, major, the equivalent of a major. But I did law school, and then when I stopped, and when I was done with law school, I started over again to do art history.
Okay. And then you went to a museum afterwards, or you did something before?
So I worked for this art center in this little town.
Ah, okay.
Because
and you were like 20-something?
Maybe a little bit younger, because I went during the summer and I told them maybe 20. I told them I'm bored. Do you have something for me to do? And they said, well, yeah, you want to be a guard in the galleries? You know, in summer vacation, and we'll pay you a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay. Why not? I mean, it's like doing nothing in an exhibition or doing nothing at home. It's kind of the same, but when I get paid. So I went to do nothing in an exhibition. But then I realized that people were asking questions. So I studied the exhibition, and then I started to give tours.
Do you remember the exhibition?
Yeah, I think the first one was called... the first one was an exhibition, because I did that for several summers. It was an exhibition about painting in the 1980s. So with Basquiat, with Baselitz,
with David Salle.
David Salle, I remember extremely well which David Salle painting it was. Francesco Clemente, Robert Combas. I mean, like the 80s. And
so that institution was big, no?
It was big. It's still there. It's still there. Still
Okay.
exists. And then it was another one called Un art de la distinction with, among other, Jeff Koons, Jenny Holzer, Sherry Levin, Chaim Steinbach,
all the great names.
Barbara
of the
Bloom, Barbara Kruger.
And you were really interested, and you did study their works so that you can answer the...
Yeah, and Marcus Rupert's retrospective. And then so I would go there and I would give tours, and then they asked me to come and work with them. And I was a student by the time. They had an office in Paris, because they would organize everything from Paris, and they asked me if I would help them during the year when they organize exhibitions. So I did that also when I was a student. And then I met someone named Bernard Blisten, who was a curator at the Pompidou at the time. And he became the director of the consortium of museum in Marseille. And one summer, I was looking for an internship, and he asked me. He gave me an internship to work with him on a few projects, and then I stayed longer past the internship, and we worked together for, like, I think a year and a half. Then I left, I went back to Paris, because he was in Marseille. Then he invited me to work with him to create the Museum of Contemporary Art in Marseille. And that was really my first job.
he invited you to be there?
The director of the museum
director.
and creating the Museum of Contemporary.
And you were like 20-something.
I was 26, 27.
So, but you did work with the architect, or no? Or it was?
No, it was an existing building, but
Okay.
it was renovated by someone who was a very good museum architect, but for scenography, Lorenzo Piqueras.
Okay. And what was your perspective for that museum? You had the complete freedom to do it. There was a collection.
There was a collection that belongs to the city of Marseille, and well, I was very interested in cross-disciplinary art.
Cross-disciplinary.
So we did with exhibition about fluxus,
Okay.
about I had a wonderful experience organizing a retrospective of the artist Ben Vautier. It was fantastic. Then I did an exhibition about called L'Art au Corps, about performing, the use of body in art from Man Ray, let's say, to Matthew Barney, and
Matthew Barney did an exhibition there? Or?
no, we had works
work.
in a group exhibition. In this group exhibition, so yeah.
And then you went to the US, or?
Then I was invited. The Fluxus exhibition that we did was done in partnership with the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And so I got to know the director of the Walker Art Center and the chief curator. The director was Kathy Halbrecht. The chief curator was Richard Flood. Two with Bernard Blisten, like three people who have really influenced me, and I learned a lot from them. There were the three of them incredible mentors. So Kathy Albrecht and Richard Flood invited me to come and work at the Walker Art Center, and I went.
Okay, and how it was the life of a young curator in the Walker Art Center, the day-by-day life that you had in your job, how it was, because you were really young, and it was a big institution.
Yeah, and I was young, but I was born old, so...
I don't think so. Or you have the Benjamin Button thing.
I have the Benjamin Button syndrome. So how was it? I mean, I remember when I arrived at the Walker Art Center, which is in Minneapolis.
Did you meet Prince or something?
No, I didn't meet Prince. I tried many times.
Because you used to go to the museum, though.
No, because I think when I was there, he was spending most of his time in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But he was there from time to time in his property.
What is it, the name?
Presley Park, outside of Minneapolis, and he would give some, like, not underground concert, but improvised concert. So there was always we were always trying to figure out how can we be invited, but I was never invited. And the life of a curator, well, if you're in Minneapolis, which is in the middle of the United States, it was, for me, one of the most formative experiences in my life, because I worked with great people. Some are still really close to me. So Katja Albrecht, Richard Flood. Actually, it's very interesting. The Kusama exhibition that we just opened is co-curated by someone named Dorian Chang, who worked with me when I was in Minneapolis. He was at the Walker. And so all these connections from the Walker Art Center, which was, so I went there in 97, are still very active in my life. So we worked a lot.
In 97, sorry.
So, a lot of the people I worked with when I was at the Walker are still very, they are like either really, really good friends or very
you feel
close
that academia at the US, you know, they're very strong theoretically. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
they're very good, yeah.
They're very good. They're very
No,
good.
that it's something that it's important to
very
be
good.
said in Europe, because people say, oh, the Americans are really easygoing, and and they are not. No, yeah, the people at the museums, they know a lot, you know.
Well, I mean,
and they work a lot.
they work a lot. They know a lot. They also, you have a different kind of support system. It's less institutional in a way than it is in Europe. So the access to museum, comparing to France, I would say is more not more democratic. It's a different way of accessing. It's not so much based, I mean, when I went there, on your academic achievements, though it was important, but there is also kind of a meritocracy. So, you know, the way you work your ideas, the way you can write, the way you can curate an exhibition.
It's less political than in Europe.
It's less political. But look, I was talking about Dorian Chang, who came to the Walker as a fellow. And we had a fellowship program, and we hired him. And all the fellows that we hired were people with exquisite scholarship and academic background. So it was very dynamic, and what I always loved is that I felt extremely supported as a young professional when I was at the Walker Art Center. And I remember when I moved there, someone asked me what would make the difference what is the difference between an American institution and a European institution at the time? My answer that might be, I don't know if it's still relevant, but I always felt there that the work I was doing was considered as an investment. Working in Europe, I often feel that the work that I'm doing, or I was doing at the time, was an expense.
Okay.
And so whatever
it's a question of guilt.
The quantity of resources made available, if you look at the resources as an expense, you think of them differently as if it is an investment. And this switch for me was very important, because the level of, if I give you 100 euros, but I feel it's an expense for me, I will look at the way you use it. But if I say, okay, I trust you, I'm going to give you 100 euros because I want to invest in you, then the way you look at your this transaction is very different and very liberating. I mean, as a young professional, to feel that gave me actually the capacity to dream, to work, to have an ambition that was not necessarily a personal ambition, but an intellectual ambition, also an institutional ambition. And that was really, really motivating.
I thought that at a certain point you were speaking about the communication, that you were saying that the museums were more democratic, but you were just speaking about the inside of the museum or the relationship with the public.
Well, when I was at the Walker Art Center, what I learned a lot at the Walker Art Center was this relationship with the community. That when I arrived in the United States was not as developed in Europe, or at least where I was working in France. This idea that we serve the community, we learn from the community, that there is this idea of giving back to the community, which is very American, and it existed both at the philanthropic level as well as the educational program that we were doing. So this integration of the museum programs, it was an art center actually, more than a museum, with the community, with How do we make sure that the program we're doing can be identified, that the community we were working in could identify with the program we were doing, could see
very American.
themselves in our program, was very important. It's very American, but it's more than that. I see it here actually. I see it
in
here
Porto.
I can see when I go to the galleries that the demographics of our visitor is affected by the I would say the identity of the artists that whom we show. And because I truly believe, and maybe I learned that there, that if the visitors don't see themselves in the exhibition or in the works of art, there's no reason for them to come. That's also why in this room, for me, it was very important. It's a young artist named Martine Syms from Los Angeles. She's an African-American artist, and this work is also about how technology reflects the representation of identities, and in her case, of African-American identities. And for me, it was very important that we open the rooms, one of the first work, the second work actually, because the first work is Luisa Cunha, that you hear with a Portuguese voice. But the second work is first the work of a woman and the work of a woman of color. Because within with the history of Portugal and the diversity of Portuguese history, to enter with images of a woman of color is very important. It's not only, like, from time to time, the European are a little bit cynical about that and say, yeah, it's politically correct. But for people who come to the museum and see this inflation of people who either look like them or do not look like them, send a signal. But when they look like them, then they can see themselves in the museum. They can see themselves on the wall. That makes a difference. Then they have a reason to come back. And that I learned, I think, in Minneapolis.
Yeah, we're going to speak more about that. But now I would like to know, you went back to France, to Pinault, yeah? And you stayed really short, yeah, like for 1 year. It was impossible
I never
for you.
went back to France.
I know, no.
No, what happened is I was very privileged to meet with François Pinault. I think it was in 2004. And we met in Venice, I remember. A friend of mine introduced us. And we kept the relationship. I was still living, of course, and working in Minneapolis. And when I would go to Paris, told me, well, when we come to Paris, just let me know. I would like to, I enjoy talking about art with you. And so we did that. And then at some point, of course, it was public knowledge that he was preparing a museum for Paris. And then he invited me to be part of his adventure in Paris. And I was very fascinated because the museum, I loved the location of the museum. I loved it was on an island outside of Paris. And it was the former location of the Renault factory, which for France has a long history. Has a very, very it's a political meaning, historical meaning, because also my grandparents used to live in this part of Paris. I also thought it was a very interesting location because it was on the Seine River, and you could actually. I thought it was very smart of him to choose this location because you can go from there following the river to the center of Paris, and you could have like a path where you have the Orsay Museum, the Louvre Museum, the Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris. All these museums are organized along the river. Then the story changed a little bit, and for French reason, and the museum could not happen despite François Pinault's commitment to this location at the time. Could not happen there, and it went to Venice. And for me, Venice was was different, and I decided, and I talked to François Pinault about it, that I would actually, I took a break from the Walker. I was doing the Whitney Biennial at the time, and I was getting ready to go work with François Pinault. But then the Venice change for me was different. Maybe it was a mistake, I don't know. But I decided that I would, at the time, actually the Walker Arts Center
invited you to be deputy director? Or?
Yeah, so I had to make a choice, and I choose to stay. And I still, I during this time I spent with François Pinault, I had it was a great privilege to, when I would go to Paris, I would have access to the archive of the collection and look at the collection, and it was very, very impressive. And beside my decision, I have a great admiration for François Pinault, for his path, the way he built himself, and also the way he interacts with works of art and with artists. And we remained, I would see him from time to time when I was in Los Angeles. He used to spend time in Los Angeles, and so I went back to the Walker Arts.
But his son lives there or something? Oh.
I don't know his son. I know who he is, but I think he might live there. Yeah.
Nowadays he's really old now. It's like 90 old. Or something.
Yeah, maybe 90. Yeah.
Okay. Shortly, tell me a little bit about the Whitney Biennial, because you were the director. Yeah?
No, I was a curator.
I
was a co-curator.
The chief curator?
No, I was invited by Adam Weinberg, who until recently was the director of the Whitney Museum, to curate the Whitney Biennial with one of the Whitney curator. Was great because she happened to be a friend, Chrissy Isles. And Chrissy Isles is a great curator with incredible knowledge of performance, video, film, experimental film. So it was also, once again, I was very lucky to be able to first to do a project like the Whitney Biennial, then to work with Chrissy. It was in 2006, if I remember well, and it was great. It was a very new experience for me because I was used to curate exhibition with long time. So, I would work 2-3 years on an exhibition. The Whitney Biennial, you have basically 8 months. Because
8 months to do everything.
By the time you're, like when Biennial closed, and there is they select a curator. By the time the curator is announced, you're already within the 2 years. You need to finish your, selection process a few months before the opening. So you have 8 months to work, and it's great because you have to be spontaneous. You have to be fast. You don't have, it's a very different exercise. You have to be intuitive. And with Chrissy, we traveled all over the United States, and we did studio visit and. It was a great. I love the process, and I'm very proud of the exhibition that we did. And I learned. I met a lot of artists through this process. So it was great. It was great, and it was an interesting moment. I was thinking of that recently because it was during the Iraq War, and I thought of that when Richard Serra passed away, unfortunately, a few weeks ago, because we showed actually a figurative work by Richard Serra, which was done as a protest against the massacre in Abu Ghraib. And the way the American military was actually behaving with Iraqi prisoner, and he did these images that was like a painting of an images that was all over the media to protest against that. So it was I had a great.
In a way, you were in charge of the biennial, and there was a selection process
for the artist.
For the artist, yeah.
It was Chrissy Isles and me.
Of course. But what oriented you in the selection? It was a political view. It was more aesthetical view that this guy plastically is very sophisticated, and we have to show him. She's very wise in the way he treats this political issue.
Well, look, that the Whitney Biennial or this exhibition biennial they have one. Their responsibility is to show
American art.
American art, but we expanded. But what's happening now? It's about now. It's a mirror of now. So we looked at it's like what Ornette Coleman called circular breathing. So you breathe in, you breathe out. So you breathe in and you breathe out your time. So I talked about the piece by Richard Serra. It was about the war, but it was not only about the war. We had great. I think it was a very melancholic exhibition, but with some politics. Like I remember a great installation by Nari Ward, great paintings by Mark Bradford, very melancholic portrait by Rudolf Stengel, great sound piece by Trisha Donnelly, which is in this exhibition here too. I mean, I don't know, we had 70 artists. So, it was, we tried to capture l'esprit du temps, the zeitgeist. Of course, with aesthetic, or aesthetic test, good test, bad test, no test, with some historical point of view. But again, we will really try to address it across the disciplines. I remember we invited, through the artist Cameron Jamie, we invited the band, what was the band name? We had a concert with, I don't remember the name. But we had like concerts, we did, concert, dance, all of that was part of the biennial. I remember we had this, I love that, we had this, we invited a musician, God, I'm blanking the name now, to give tours.
To give tours? Okay.
Yeah, an artist to give tours, but we refused to give him, he couldn't have information. So all these tours,
so he was looking or say, come
he was
on,
making things up.
Yeah,
he was like telling stories, and most of the tours were lies.
Yeah.
What was his name?
No, that's fantastic.
So
imagine to have Pedro Brunhosa doing a tour here.
But not knowing, just inventing.
Yeah. Or Adolfo Luxúria Canibal.
His name was Momus.
Okay.
It was a great. I mean, I don't know what happened to him. He was a great singer-songwriter.
And he was doing.
So he
tours.
would come and he had a tour, the Momus tour, every day, I think. But it was totally based on his own thing. Most of it was making things up.
Yeah. Then back to Walker as a deputy director. Then. Tell me one thing. Here in Europe, we look to the US museums, and you think that the director or the deputy director, one of the main tasks is to raise money. Is it true? It's not? It changed in the last 20 years. What do you feel? Because you know so well the museum atmosphere in the US. Yeah.
Well, as you know, with very few exceptions, most of the American museums are private and do not benefit public funding. So
they're very dependent.
So most of the livelihood of museum is based on philanthropy, which is very often individual philanthropy. So yes, when you are director in the United States, I would say that the lion's share of your time and your work is to make sure you can afford your program. So you have to convince donors, board members.
And for someone that it was from the outside of the US, it was harder, or
at the beginning it was hard because when you grew up in France, nobody talks about money.
It's like in Portugal.
You don't. And I was raised in a, I was always told by my parents, don't ask for things. Ne pas réclamer. So when you do fundraising, you go and you have to ask, you have to beg, you have to be a beggar, a professional beggar. And at the beginning, it was embarrassing. I didn't know how to ask people, like, and then you have to put a number. It's not like, oh, Miguel, give me a bit of money. You say, no, Miguel, give me 50,000.
50,000.
I want, I mean, whatever it was needed. So you have to go, ask directly, put a number, and be like totally transparent. So at the beginning, it was not easy. But then you also realize, and when you do that, you do it with a goal. You're not asking money for yourself. You're asking money for artists.
Yeah.
You're asking money for institutions. You're asking, and when you do that, you ask funding for the public, because it's a way to fulfill a public service, accessibility to art and culture. And what you learn...
And the American people, the rich people, they are waiting for that, yeah.
They are waiting for that. And I remember having a meeting not when I was at the Walker Art Center, but when I became the director of the Dia Foundation in New York. I had a meeting with someone whom I really admire. His name is Arnie Glemscher. He created the Pace Gallery. And he created this gallery, which is almost like a museum now. And I remember having lunch with him, and he told me, "Don't be shy to ask money to people, because in the United States and in New York, if you do not give, you are nobody." So the idea of giving back is actually is also people expect it, and if you don't ask, they might be you might hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
You have to measure. If you ask not enough, you hurt their feeling. If you ask too much, they think you're stupid. Okay. So, really because you do there is, but a lot of it's a science. Like here, I think if I compare with
but Serralves does that.
Serralves does that very well. I think
does that very well.
Very well, very well. I think
I think it's the only.
I think it's one of the rare institutions in Europe.
In Europe,
in Portugal, but in Europe,
very well, and
who does that very successfully with individual and with corporation.
Did you help there?
When I can,
so many experiences.
Well, I was able to bring a little bit of my network. So from when I can.
Okay. And you go to the dinners with her?
I go to some dinners with her. Yeah, but she's. I have to say, she doesn't really need me. I mean, for the Portuguese scene, she doesn't. For the context here, she's really, extremely effective, and also because I think when you do that, and when you do that well, it means that when you do it, when the motivation of asking for help is the right one, you do it. It's a way to communicate your mission, to communicate your program. It's a way, again, to promote the artists you're working with, or you're working for, or that you want to share the work.
To show.
So I think, and some people are, they are happy to be asked. They're happy to be asked. There is
and people are not stupid.
No, there is great joy in giving. There's great joy in giving. In Europe, it's different.
What is it, the percentage of money that is collected from the private sector that are from outside of Portugal? Because you told that you put your network on the service of Serralves as well.
Well, it depends on the project. And again, I think if I look at the economy of scale of Serralves, I think it's, through very specific initiative over the last 4 years, we're able to actually find really strong, loyal sources of support. I wouldn't be able to tell you the percentage, but for almost every exhibition, I see what I can do to get the support.
Because it's important to be said, because people in Portugal, I think, don't know that are money that are coming from abroad.
There is money coming from abroad, from people who are from abroad, but also have a deep interest in Portugal.
Okay.
So all that helps. But there was also, I'm like Portuguese donors, and I find the level of the way Serralves benefit from philanthropy quite impressive. Quite impressive.
Okay, really shortly, when you were director of the Art Center in New York, it was the first time you were the director. Uh-huh. It must have been great, no?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a great responsibility, and DIA is, I think, is in many ways a model institution. And I love the artists that are
It's a private institution.
It's a totally private institution.
It has donors and...
Endowment. That's the thing that is very important for American institutions. You have an endowment, and an endowment is a capital. The capital is invested.
Okay. And by a board or something?
The board of American institution is often as finance committee.
Of course.
The finance committee.
It's responsible for the investments.
Monitor the investment, and often, most of the time, in order to avoid any kind of conflict of interest, the investment themselves are done through investing companies or consultant, with, of course, a check and balance, because we can. You have to. It was very interesting for me to see how, by sitting in these investment committees, whether it was at DIA or at MOCA, to understand how a portfolio was managed with, what kind of level of risk you would actually...
Because you were fascinated with that as well.
Well, it was interesting because,
it was important for you as well.
Yeah, it was. The budget of the museum depends partly on that. So
on the revenues of the investment.
And you cannot lose the capital. So, and because this consultant or these companies invest, someone else's money, the level of risk change. So it was very interesting for me to understand from the board members how they would actually spread out the risk, the safe investment, the risky investment, in order to manage a steady source of revenues for the institution and protect the institution.
Gulbenkian has that, but Serralves doesn't have that, no. Okay. Then you went to MOCA as director. It was in California, and I would like that you'd speak, because you know so much about American art, and in particular West American art. And there's so big names like Mike Kelly, Baldessari, Raymond Petitbon. It's like, even I think Jason Pollock was born in California, then he went to New York, but he's a New York artist. How like the culture in California, like the sun, the beaches, the surf, influence in a way the artists and the way they produce their art?
Well, I'm not sure that what influenced them is. If you talk about Raymond Petitbon, surfing is part of of the making of the work.
Because you have like a kind of a punk culture in the West part of the US, and imagine in Brazil, it's not like that. It's like a very warm place as well, with a lot of beaches, waves, and everything. And if you go to figure out the punk culture in Brazil, like you have like a band, Titãs, that it's a group of a band from the late 70s, I think, beginning of the 80s, that it's kind of punk, but they're very good, but it's a joke as a punk event, But in California, it's not a joke. Even if you go back to the 60s, the Doors, it's really heavy music. It's not like fun music or something. So how do you explain that happens? It's the American culture that it's so hard and about struggling, about money as well, that makes that happens.
Well, I think if you look at the, I mean, traditionally, the East Coast and New York has been perceived until a certain moment, late 50s, early 60s, as the center, because of, I think, they were frontally in front of Europe, and they benefited
of that.
during the war a lot of the artists or who were escaping Europe during the war. So the notion of avant-garde, American avant-garde, might have been born on the East Coast, or also with an institution like the Black Mountain College. But I think as much as New York developed as a cultural capital, a financial capital, a market capital for artists, California had something else, and I think it was more about a certain sense of freedom, because some artists were there because so that they were not in New York, because they could work differently, because you could have different relationship with space, bigger studio maybe. If you look at why David Hockney choose Los Angeles versus and not New York, because the light that was very important for his work. But look at Bruce Nauman. I mean, originally he was on the West Coast. And then you have a group of artists really that I wouldn't say performance based, but Chris Bird and a fantastic artist that is not very known here, like Barbara Smith, Paul McCarthy, of course, John Baldessari and Ed Ruscha, where cinema, a cinematic landscape, a moving landscape, a landscape that was totally in sync with contemporary culture. I think that's what made, more than the waves and the sun, what made Los Angeles. The mix of population, the fact that in Los Angeles you have, tremendous amount of cultural influence from Latin America, Mexico, Asia.
But neither of those guys were from Mexican origins.
No, but the culture is there. But
because you go to LA and you walk on the street and you just see people that that are from Spanish.
But there is a reassessment of that. I also
nowadays,
think because
but even nowadays, if you look to the movie stars, if they try to go to have like a Spanish character or a Mexican character, they will call Banderas or Penelope Cruz. That
but that's changing. That's changing.
Of
Even and you have a lot of.
But I would like that you speak about
a lot of institutions, mostly maybe not the most important. I mean, now it has changed, but a lot of institutions, like grassroots institutions in Los Angeles, who did a lot of work, actually with what was perceived at the time as minority. Of course,
the mainstream
remain like everywhere, like more conventional.
The other day I was speaking with the curator, Anthony Huberman, you know him.
Yeah, of course, very well.
Yeah, I was speaking with him when I was in the summer for the short exhibition in San Francisco, and he was kind of saying that he was going back to New York because it's really nice to live on the West Coast, but in a way it's a bit more close-minded or more narrow. I think San Francisco is different from LA.
San Francisco is very different from Los Angeles.
So. Los Angeles is much better for me.
I think it's a more open society. For me, it's difficult to have a stereotype because I lived in New York and I lived in LA, and I loved both. I loved both experience. But I think there is also the history it's a different history of America. We did here an exhibition with Mark Bradford. Through Mark's work, you have a different history of America. The history that comes from the street of Los Angeles, from race relation in Los Angeles, like he does stylistically differently than someone like Kara Walker, also who I worked with. Really find a representation of America, which is beyond, I think, the stereotype and beyond conventional representation. Mark's work can only exist in Los Angeles.
Sorry?
Mark's works can only exist. I mean, can only.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense that it's coming out of it. It can exist everywhere, but that it's coming
but I
and it's
understand.
produced, generated from Los Angeles. So for me, this friction that are in Los Angeles is a city of friction, of contrast. You go, you follow Sunset Boulevard or Beverly Boulevard, and you go from the richest part of the world to the poorest. All that in one of the richest country in the world. So for that, it's fascinating. I don't remember your question.
Me too. Me too. Nowadays, you felt that you kind of were cancelled in the US.
Me?
No. When you left MOCA.
Cancelled?
Yeah, because people say that you had some problems and that.
I don't know.
No, you don't feel that.
I don't have problems.
No problems. Everybody has.
Well, no, I don't.
Everybody
I only have solutions. No, I mean,
I have problems.
It's funny you saying that, but no, I don't feel that.
Okay.
I mean, I think everything that happened is published, so and I've never talked about it.
Let's speak the other way. Do you feel that the cancel culture in the US can be a bit dangerous to the artistic practice?
Yeah, but I don't think it's only in the US. I think I think it's,
no, but they are on the
they are on the forefront.
Because they usually in everything.
They anticipate.
Okay, let's speak in the world. Okay.
I think in the world there is actually
should freedom prevail in the art world? Because there are some people that says that freedom, it's the only place where freedom should prevail, and you should not have codes for the black people or for the women. I don't agree on that.
Look, I think
but that's a question.
Look, I think everybody in every culture is right now walking on eggshell. Why? I think we're going through tremendous changes, tremendous tension. I think the moral compass is lost at many levels, and I think it's very I mean, I'm terrified by the flame of moral purification, wherever they're coming from. I'm terrified, by censure, but I'm more terrified by self-censure. I think there is a lot of self-censure right now. And
that it's imposed by the culture.
Well, the self-censure is imposed by yourself.
Of course, but
on yourself by yourself.
Yeah,
but it's also because you have, the pendulum went from a moment of extreme convention to extreme liberation, and it's impossible that it doesn't create, for me, tension and problem. And then the readjustment that come with the move of the pendulum are necessary. Are extremely necessary, but and then of course you have excess. I think as an institution, it's really part of what we need to do to figure out how we can guide that, and then we can guide the voices and the fact that we can talk openly, but it's really difficult.
But we were in this room, and at the beginning we were speaking about the work of her, and do you think that as a museum director, you should try to put the things more even, more fair? You should, in a way, took a decision if the artist is black or it's.
It goes back to what we were talking earlier. For me, it's very important that people can see themselves in the museum. So, and I hope it works in this presentation of the collection and in the program that we do. For me, that's important. That there is a sense of what do you call that? It's not so much, diversity, of course, but I'm looking for the word that I'm not finding right now. Inclusiveness. Because I think, for me, the danger is when I go back to the flame of moral purification or the flame of morality triggers exclusion. Because I think what we do is to trigger inclusion. If we don't do that, we fail. We fail ourselves, we fail the artist, we fail, I'm just a museum person, we fail our visitors. And that's, for me, that's the biggest. How do you manage to foster inclusion and to give access to this inclusive way of working? That's, for me, a very, that's a challenge.
Okay.
That's a challenge. It's what makes things interesting.
Okay. When I was in California last summer, I saw and felt that every single American guy was saying to me, I would love to go to live in Portugal because then I'm going to be happy there. It was the way you came here?
Well, no, it was not the way I came here.
How did you manage to come to Portugal?
I took a plane.
Yeah, but before that?
I picked up the phone.
No, but let's go back and say, what was your connection to Portugal before Serralves? None. Okay. You've never been here in Portugal. It was your first time in Lisbon or in Porto?
In Porto.
In Porto. The first time you came here. Okay. And did you know the Portuguese artists, or did you know the Portuguese literature?
I knew to be honest, I knew very little. I knew the obvious one. I knew very little, and I still consider that I know very little. I knew Julio Sarmento, I knew Vera da Silva, Paula Rego, Elena Almeida, Cabrita, Gusmão Paiva, Francisco Tropa, in terms of artist, Leonel Antunes. But my knowledge was very superficial. I had never been to Portugal.
And what made your decision? What made your decision?
Well, what made my decision? It was weird. So that's what made the decision. It was weird. Okay. The way it happened was really weird.
But they contact you?
So what happened? I was in New York. I was visiting a gallery of someone who was that you might know, Miguel Abreu.
Yeah.
And Miguel Abreu told me, and we were good friends, he told me, I just came back from Portugal, from Porto, because one of my artists had an exhibition in a gallery in Porto, and Nuno Centeno Gallery, and he told me, it's fantastic, Porto is fantastic. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I've never been. I said, but
you were still in
I was
MOCA.
still in Los Angeles. And he told me, they're looking for, the museum, Serralves. I said, yeah, I know of Serralves because a lot of my friends have had exhibition here or were curators or had done curated exhibition here. So I knew the reputation very well, and I followed what Serralves was doing. And he told me, well, apparently they're looking for a director. Maybe you should go there. I was like, look, I've never been to Portugal. I don't know anybody in Portugal. It's nice. Thank you for I appreciate the interest. But then I went back to Los Angeles, and like 2 weeks later, I received a phone call from the people who were working on this.
Okay. Miguel Nabinho called them. No,
I don't know who called them.
Of course.
And then I came to visit, and I was very impressed by. I came, I visit. I was very impressed by Serralves. For me, it's great that Serralves is in Portugal, but I was impressed by Serralves, by the building, by what I saw here, by the connection between the park. I thought it was full of potential, and I look at the exhibition history, and I was like, wow. Philippe Vergne is someone that we've known each other for like many years, and I followed the work. We worked together, and he had a big exhibition here. Egg Yu Yang had an exhibition. They're all friends, and they all had exhibition here. So I called them and I said, "What do you think? You like the place?" And they really, it's great. So one thing led to the other, and I was like, "Okay, let's." It was a little bit for me like going to Minneapolis. It was
it was the same?
Yeah, it was so weird. Like there's no reason to, like when you live there's no reason to move to Minneapolis. Unless you go work. For me, if you work in the cereal business, you go work for General Mills. But I'm in the art business, so you go work for the Walker Art Center. But it was like, it was so surprising, so unexpected, that when something unexpected like that presents itself, if you say no, you're stupid, because you're missing something. And the fact that I didn't know anybody, that I didn't know the language, still struggling with it, that it was really a leap in the void, I thought it was great.
And how did you see the Portuguese art scene when you arrived and nowadays? Did it change a little bit?
I'm not sure I have a very...
clear perspective.
Not clear, I have a perspective, but I'm not sure it's right.
But it's your perspective.
Yeah, that's why I'm not sure it's right. I didn't know much, so the first two. When I arrived, we were, I met with Cabrita, I met with Romaya Gusmao. So it was a very interesting different contrast. And then I started I did as much as I could to learn. And I've been very impressed by the art scene in Portugal, by the quality of the work that I'm seeing. Also, the quality of the work, considering, I think, the difficulty of being an artist in Portugal, because, as you know, what makes an ecology is you need to have institution, you need to have artists first. If you want to have an art scene, it would be nice to start with the artist. You have to have artists. Then you have to have a gallery. Then you have to have a collector. Then you have to have an institution. And then you have to make sure all of that works together to create an ecology that could be also exported. And we know that in Portugal, some element of this ecology are more, some are very strong, some are not that strong. So I think as an artist, it's still difficult to, to work and live here. And this being said, I think there is also an independence, an artistic independence. Maybe it's connected to the fact that the art market is not as present as it is in other locations in Europe or in the United States.
There's good things about that and bad things about that.
Absolutely, because in order to have a healthy ecology, I like when artists sell work. I think it's great that an artist can make a living from their work. So but you're right. One of the consequence of that is, I think, it might be a different kind of aesthetic freedom. I find the artist uncompromising here, which I think is for me is great.
Like an Ajota.
Like an Ajota, of course. But like, I can also only talk about the artists I have engaged with directly, because I don't want to, again, make generalities, but an Ajota, Gushmo Paiva, Rui Chaves, I think they are very, very singular voices. And they are very difficult to find equivalent somewhere else. And that I find very interesting. Cabrita, I mean, I learn a lot by also my conversation with Julio Sarmento. So it's a learning, for me it's been a learning experience, but this idea of like independence, singularities, uncompromising attitude, I think it's really what I'm learning from the Portuguese art scene. I mean, like the one for me, like someone like Vera Monteiro, because I see, or Pedro Costa, I try to see things, in the transversal.
I think the biggest challenge for the Portuguese artists is to become international, to go outside of Portugal. Do you think that you can do and that you've been doing something about that? Because you have such a big network, it's difficult, you think about it.
Yeah, well, I hope that we can contribute. I mean, we did, as you know, I was very happy when Marta Almeida here did an exhibition with Carla Philippe. I think it was very interesting for me to witness, because in many ways, I think Carla Philippe is a known quantity in Portugal. I mean, the Portuguese art scene has seen her work a lot, but for someone who's not from Portugal, it's been a real discovery. And I hope it was also a discovery from people from Portugal. But I know that from the visitors, professionals, colleagues who came to Porto during the exhibition, it was an absolute discovery. Whether or not it's going to, I don't know how much the needle's going to move, but our collectors, art galleries, other artists looking at the work, they were like, wow, how come we don't know Carla Philippe? I think the same with Rui Chaves. I hope that the work that we've done with Gushmao Paiva through the exhibition, the publication, I hope it contributes.
But do you try to put those exhibitions outside of Portugal?
We try. It's not.
It's really difficult.
I think it's really difficult because first, the last few years has been quite difficult for touring exhibition.
Okay.
Because of what happened with COVID and the economy, the way it has impacted museums. I mean, a touring exhibition always help, but that has been more challenging. But I also think that from time to time, a conversation could be as impactful as a touring exhibition. I think, as much when people come to Portugal, curators or collectors, or I always try to tell them, oh, you should see that, and that. But we cannot be the only force doing that. I think it needs to come also from the gallery that are working with the artists and from the artist. I mean, I also remember Julio Sarmento telling me that he was always making a priority every year to travel. He loved Los Angeles, so he was very close to John Baldessari. So it was a priority for him. I'm going to go there. I'm going to show my work there. I'm going to build a network of artists there.
And he did it very well.
And he did very well, but it was a decision. It didn't
was,
happen
yeah.
like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to Los Angeles and people are going to love
What
me.
I feel in Portugal is that the artists that became kind of international, it was on their own. It was not about the galleries. It was not about the museums. It's about themselves. It's about themselves got into a plane and go everywhere.
And
Cabrita was like that. Julio Sarmento was like that. Okay, the galleries, they try. Even Cristina, it's amazing because she did like, she's spending like loads of money in terms of art fairs, but I have serious doubts about the efficiency on that. You know, what I feel is that the artists by themselves, some of them they did really good jobs, but the galleries and the institutions they're not
like Gushma Paiva, I think they really also made a very deliberate decision to be
of going abroad.
to travel. But I would say that also for not only Portugal. I remember we were talking about Philippe Vergne earlier. I remember 25 years ago when Philippe Vergne and a group of artists around him started to really, even more now, to have when they really embraced their career as artists. They were everywhere. They were everywhere. They were traveling all the time, and it was not always glamorous. It was first they needed it because
Juan Muñoz, it was the same.
Yeah, and they had to travel, and so you have to
go there.
You have to go there. You have to go there. And if you don't go there, it's fine not to go there if you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Like,
of course. Of course.
Yes.
In terms of what the board of Serralves think about the project of Serralves and what Philippe Vergne think about the project of Serralves. What are the freedom that they give you and how the interception works?
Well, it works. It works. Look, I think it's funny because everybody is asking this question, but the question is for Serralves.
No, because there's a lot of rumors. I have to speak about clearly. There's a lot of rumors that the board it's really keen on doing away to Serralves. And I'm just asking to see your opinion. I'm not imposing
No. I
your
understand.
opinion. Yeah.
Look, before I answer that, I think I worked in my life in one,
like
two,
6 or 7. Or
3, 4. This is my 5th institution.
What's your 5th
I've been
institution?
institutionalized at a very young age. In every institution.
I was not understanding the joke. I was not understanding the joke. Yeah.
Yes, you did. That's my voluntary servitude. But when you enter an institution, if you decide to work in an institution, you know that you have to understand the institution. When I was at the Walker Art Center, when I was in Marseille, I had to understand. When I was at the Walker Art Center, I had to understand what was the mission of the institution and what was my marge de manœuvre. Same thing at DIA, very different to program at DIA than to program at the Walker, very different to program at MOCA than to program at DIA. In all of these institutions, you have a relationship with governance. Some of them are, and they're all different. They're all different. So when I came to Serralves, we had a very open conversation about what were the goals of Serralves and what's possible, what's not possible. And again, I think you work with him a framework, and the framework of Serralves, like many museums, is when an institution reaches a certain scale, well, you have obligations. You have your mission. You have to identify strategies to make this mission possible and to make it accessible And that, for me, is really the interesting conundrum of an institution. So when I look at the program that we have, and I see that we can do Kapwanikiwanga, Tarek Atoui, Korakrita Runanonchai, Yoko Ono, Louise Bourgeois, Yayoi Kusama, an exhibition about the revolution, upcoming João Pedro Val and Nuno Alexandre. I feel that the marge de manœuvre that we have, because it's not only me, I work with a team, Inés Grosso, who's a great chief curator, Marta Almeida, who's a great deputy director, Ricardo Nicolao, that we actually have the leverage to have the conversation that we need to have. And we have the leverage to achieve the program that we need to achieve. But of course, we are not working in a vacuum. And so I have conversation with the governance structure of Serralves. And part of my role as a director, whether it's here or whether it's at MOCA in Los Angeles, is to convince people to say, no, this is what we need to do. And from time to time, is to say, no, I don't want to do that, but yes, I want to do that. Or it's not that I don't want to do that. No, I don't think that's is for now.
Okay. Okay.
But this conversation, you know, Glenn Laurie has them, Laurent Lebon has them. So this relationship with governance is a dynamic, and from this dynamic, you create something. And as you know, the dynamic has been good, but it's a dynamic. You have conversation. You know,
But you feel that Portugal it's a bit more conservative in terms of accepting that dynamic? You felt that in the US it's more common to accept that dynamic?
Well, I had a very dynamic when I was in Los Angeles. Okay. You know, it was it was. You know, it's a dynamic. You have to fight for your stuff. You know, it's what we do is difficult. You know, to show. I mean, let me take another. To show. I'm trying to find a good example. To show Korakrita Runanonchai in 2021, I think it was, in Porto. An artist from Thailand who work on gender fluidity. Nobody's going to come to me and say, oh, Philippe, would you please find us a young artist who work on gender fluidity? Because we really want that. No, it's not going to happen. So you have to present it, you have to defend it, you have to say, this is why I think it's important. Of course, I like the work. But if we do what we do right, it's difficult because we not, you know, I always tell the board of Serralves that I think my role is to, I always say two words, to confront and to comfort. Because if I comfort all the time, I'm not doing my job. But if I confront all the time, I'm not doing my job either. In both cases, I cut the possibility of accessibility. From time to time, a chair just needs to be a chair, needs to be comfortable.
So you are a diplomat. Yeah.
So you can look at something difficult because you're sitting in a comfortable way. So you need to, it's not a diplomat, it's like when you cook a meal, you put some spice and then you put some...
Come on, we cannot see the diplomacy as a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. Okay. As long as you confront, comfort, not to front.
They confront, imagine like Blixen now, what he's trying to do in Israel. It's really difficult. He's trying to, in a way, he's trying to...
Yeah, well, people don't die because of what I do, so I feel lucky.
Of course. Of course.
I think
No, come on.
But I think it's, I mean, people don't die because of what I do. But if we do as an
They can
institution,
live-
if we do what
but
we
they
do
can live
well,
happier or in a
we
more
might
interesting
actually
way.
help people think outside of the box. But what we, I mean, I always remember, I had a really good and nice relationship with Merce Cunningham. And I did a show with Merce Cunningham, an exhibition on Merce Cunningham and his relationship with visual artists. And I always remember Merce telling me that
When was that? It was at the year? No.
No, it was at the Walker Art Center.
Okay.
I think it was 99.
Okay.
And it's interesting because Serralves also, almost at the same time, did a show with around Merce Cunningham that was curated by Germano Celent. Merce told me that he always thought that if half of the audience doesn't leave the theater at the middle, he's not doing his job. So I don't want people to leave, but I know that contemporary art, by nature, is more difficult, and it has to be like that. So, yes, we have to go get it.
You feel that you're doing the Merce thing here at Serralves?
I don't want people. No, it was a different time. It's a different time too, because when he was saying that, keep in mind that he was, he started in the 50s and 60s. What I want is not the Merce thing, even though the Merce thing is very healthy, because when you say that, you also have deep respect for your audience. By not second-guessing your audience, you respect them because you understand, or you respect the fact that they will respect your work or the work of the artist you show. For me, I go back to the word accessibility. I want, it's a seduction. When you want to seduce people in what you do. I'm very happy when people come, I'm very happy when people enter this room and they're like, oh my God, it's great. They don't even know who Martine Syms here, but they have like a visual, it has a visual impact. I'm very happy that people come here, see Kusama and discover Kapwani Kiwonga, because they don't know, and that for me is really rewarding. It's really rewarding that you use the tools. The museum is a tool. It's a toolbox. You use a tool to invite people to look at art differently, and therefore to look at the world differently. Because when you do that, they don't have to like what we do. But if you go to a museum or a gallery, you look at something, you don't understand it, and you don't like it, but you respect it. If you do that for an object, if you do that for an image, you can do that for your neighbors. If you are next to someone whom you do not understand, who you don't like the way they look, you don't understand what they say, but you respect them, then maybe Blinken would have a different job right now. Because it's about, I think what we do, when I say accessibility, it's about, and thinking outside of the box, it's about this how do we teach visual literacy so that we can be better citizens, so that we can be more inclusive. And that's for me, beside my personal test, beside the conversation I have with governance, at the end of the day, the mission.
It's very political.
It's not political. It's it's political, but it's a public institution. It's in the sense of politics, in the Greek sense. We are in the agora, and the agora is a public space. And this public space needs to be accessible and democratic. And that, for me, beyond all, the choices, the conversation, the agreement, disagreement, we all share, I think, what I just described. We all share that. Then we took different strategy, but we all share that. As long as we share that with boards, with staff, we are in good shape. That's when we don't share that things start to fall apart. But we share that, and we share that at Serralves. So I don't care about the rumors. I like the rumors actually, because we have to give. When you have rumors, is that people you give people something to talk about, and I love giving people something to talk about. I think it's great.
And what people are going to talk about you in the future? What do you want to do in the future?
Well, I would like them to talk about something else. I think they would have better things to talk about.
No, I was joking. I just want to know. Of course, maybe you're going to stay for long in Serralves. I don't know. It depends on you and on the board, and I don't care about that. I would love that you'd stay much more, because I like you personally, and I like the work that you've been doing very, very well. I'm just saying this at the end of the interview. Would not be fair to say at the beginning, but I really like
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'm not very connected to the institutions. I'm not a very, as you can imagine, I'm not a guy of museums, but I like you very much, and I appreciate very, very much what you've been done here in Portugal. I think we are really lucky to have you here.
I really appreciate you saying that, but you can only say that because I am given the resource and the means and the leverage for you to like me. And to like not me, but the work I do.
Yeah, but always, but at the end depends on you as well.
Of course.
At the end depends on you as well. So, apart from Serralves, you would love to go back to France. You would love to go back to California, as your family are from there, and you have a kid and everything. So, you turning 60 in 10 years. And,
no, 25 years. We'll turn 60 in 25 years.
So what do you expect for the next 40 years of your life?
Well, first, I would go back to one of your first questions. I don't think about going back.
Okay.
So, and I really don't know.
That's the reply about France, yeah?
It's about France. It's in general.
Are you going Russia? Maybe. Yeah.
Well, maybe not Russia. Look, everything that happened, I really think, and I don't say that to be precious or. I think I've been extremely privileged and extremely lucky. I remember one of my mentors, Bernard Blisten, talking about something called l'injustice des rencontres. And I really believe in that. I'm here because of l'injustice des rencontres. I went to Minneapolis because of l'injustice des rencontres. And
la justice des rencontres, it's the justice about
the injustice.
The injustice.
The injustice of meetings.
Okay.
The injustice of encounter. It's a little bit like John Cage, chance meeting.
Yeah.
It happened here like that, and I really don't know. I don't think of it. I don't plan it. It's like a dinner party. At some point in a dinner party,
you meet someone,
but you know when it's over.
Yeah. You don't. Or you get in love.
You get in love, but usually when you go to a dinner party, like the host is not telling you, okay, now it was nice to have you for dinner out. And you don't say, oh my God, it's time. Like you have this kind of like intuitive moment.
I was at the Hearst house in California, and they were explaining that he had like a huge table.
Who?
Hearst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he had a huge table, and imagine that I was going to be invited to be there, and I would be like really close to him, and he was putting me far and far and far until I went out of the house.
But you would do that, I'm sure, very nicely.
Yeah.
Very smoothly.
Yeah.
So, I think
you're waiting to see.
I'm not waiting.
Okay.
I'm just working.
Okay.
I'm working and
waiting in a way that you're not expecting anything.
I'm not expecting any. I have no expectations.
Okay. But for your kid, you have.
For my kid, I have. But I have only the expectation that he has. I will support his expectations, and I will make it my expectation.
Yeah. And it's a good thing too. to go after?
It's like, I think when we do what we do, I think it maybe the same for you, is that how do you manage to remain relevant and open so that you don't say no to things? I think it's so easy to say no.
I think that's the perfect way to end the interview. It was a big pleasure.
Thank you.
I did like very much to do this interview, and maybe we'll speak on the future. Or
we will speak in the future.
yeah.
But well, thank you for doing that.
Without
thank
cameras.
you for doing that.